Welcome to the Speak Pact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Rose, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the Speak Pact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Rose.
Welcome back to Speak Pact. We are so thrilled that you're here with us today. Today I have Aaron Golub in the room. And you're going to be able to follow his journey to becoming a sought-after speaker, with the early beginnings, where he is now, where he sees himself in the future. So we're just going to enter into this journey with you, Aaron. Thank you for being with us. And did I say your last name right?
Yeah, Gal. Great to be here with you, Antoniette, as well.
Well, what gave you, first of all, the courage to start getting on stage? Did you always love it? Was it something you had to talk yourself into? So what led you to the stage?
You know, it sort of just happened for me. My story started when I was 17 years old and I was asked to go on Good Morning America. And we'll get into my background in athletics and stuff later, I'm sure. But I had a really interesting story. And when I committed to play football at Tulane University, I got a call from Good Morning America to come on and share my background and story. And I didn't want to at first, but very thankful that I did. And that's kind of the first step that catapulted me later on to, getting booked and paid to speak.
Do you think that your athletic career, so obviously in the early beginnings that opened some doors for you, but how did you break past that? Because you're at a level of your career now where it can't still be running on that fuel alone. Now it has to do with the interests that you bring, the transformations that you bring. How did you find yourself, I guess, outside of the celebrity?
So the answer is it does still help significantly. And that's not what you want to hear. But at the end of the day, when you have an interesting story, the reason I get on calls with companies like Deloitte, like Pepsi, like Kellogg, like those big companies, I get on the call because they love my story and they want to hear that. But that's not how I close the deal. I close the deal because I show them the value that I provide. And if you have an interesting story, you're going to be much more likely to be able to get on calls with those large companies. It just is what it is. I'm not gonna lie to you there. That's how it is as a speaker. The more interesting your story and background is, the easier it is for you to get on those calls. Yeah. Once I get on the calls, though, I show them the value that I provide, and that's how I close the deal and win large engagements.
So you put that in the same. So I look at a person's story. Yes, we have to have powerful stories, in a different bucket as a person's celebrity, which is part of your story as well. But do you see that as do you think that you could have maybe never had celebrity and still had a powerful story and it would have still opened the doors?
I guess I'm confused what you mean by that. My background is I'm the first legally blind Division I athlete to play in a game. And that's why I get on calls with people. People are interested in that. Yes, they want to see me speak in that. And that's great. And a lot of people reach out to me because they've heard me speak or whatever. But especially when you do cold outreach, and we'll get into different things later, but the more interesting your story is and people see that, and then they want to have that call with me. And then on that call, we show the value that I provide through my speaking engagements, my workshops, my consulting.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're talking the same language. I'm just approaching it a little bit different. So you have your really powerful story, but then through that, you got some celebrity, you got fans, being a legally blind, successful athlete, right? So that's the celebrity part of it. And I think that a lot of people believe, a lot of emerging speakers believe that you have to, have been a former athlete, or you have to have been a former politician, maybe even actor, to have a successful, prosperous, impactful speaking career. I happen to disagree. Sometimes that can help open doors, but at the end of the day, your story has to resonate with the person sitting in the seat. Not everybody's going to resonate with the fact that you achieved what you achieved. legally blind, right? But it's that journey of resilience that everybody can relate to, and you've packaged your story in a way that people can grasp onto and um, resonate with, and then hopefully walk away from your talk with something that has transformed them. What would you say the difference between celebrity and your story is?
I mean, I think you talked about it. The resilience, the overcoming adversity, the leadership, the thinking differently. Those are all topics that I get booked significantly, through it. I do strongly agree with you. I think that, look, anyone can become a speaker. You don't need to have a, I guess how you put it, celebrity ish background to do that. You don't need to be a former athlete or politician. I do think it helps. I think that if you're a former athlete, former politician,
Opens some doors.
former CEO, it absolutely helps. It's going to be easier for you. But I also know, plenty of people who don't have that and, have been able to become successful speakers as well.
Yeah. Well, and I love that people came for your story, but they stuck around for the transformation, what you actually bring to the table. How did you find that? How did you find that message that you wanted people to walk away with? Was it something that evolved over time, or you always knew you wanted to make this specific difference in your audiences?
There's three main areas that I focus on. One is really around the overcoming adversity and perseverance, and that was just obvious from my story. That's obviously something that I've been able to do and build within myself, and so using that to bring to audiences, to companies, to conferences was kind of the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Outside of that, throughout the years, developing ones around leadership has been super successful for me because I was a team captain. And so taking those same traits of leadership and teamwork into something that I could implement in companies and teams was really helpful. And the third, and honestly, one of my most popular, is what I call thinking differently about disabilities. All companies, so many companies bring me in for that because they want to bring someone in who talks about, perception of disabilities or disability awareness or what that was like for me. And so using my background and knowledge in that space to talk to companies about what they can do to allow people with different backgrounds, different disabilities to succeed has worked really well for me as well, and finding that unique niche that you have. Because yes, there's a lot of people that can talk on leadership or overcoming adversity. Less people can dive deeper into that disability side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talking from experience, but also from a place of victory. And I love that you brought that to the table, Erin, because I think a lot of people think they've gone through something big, and they think because of that, the story alone is good enough. But I really have seen it can backfire. If you're talking from open wounds, the last thing you want is an audience that feels sorry for you, right? You want to talk from a place of victory, from healed scars. Even though you still have what would be considered a disability, there are a lot of people with absolute functioning everything, right, who will never achieve what you've achieved because you didn't allow that to stop you and stumble you. And it's part of your story, but it's also not like this open bleeding heart that you're bringing to stage. Can you speak to that a little bit? At what point, I mean, at first people were calling you up, bringing you on to just purely share your story, but in that you found a message and a mission. Where was that breaking point for you?
Well, I think even before I was doing a lot of speeches, I always have had the perspective of I'm thankful and grateful I was born legally blind. If I could go back to birth and change it, I wouldn't do so. And having that gratitude and that perspective around it, by no means in any point in my story does someone feel bad for me in that sense.
That's great.
They're, wowed and amazed through what I've been able to do. Maybe I'm sure there's certain people that relate to certain aspects and maybe feel bad for that minute of the speech, of the talk, and that's totally fine. But the overarching themes for me are developed to, show the value and take those stories and those lessons and relate that to what they're going through. And so a perfect example, yesterday I was speaking at a conference for a company for their sales kickoff event, and what their theme was lead with confidence. And so it was, when I was tailoring that and going through my process to get ready, it was, how do I relate my stories, my background, yes, football, but my entire life and my message to lead with confidence. And yes, there's obviously aspects of confidence and things like that in my story, but making sure that you connect those dots to what they're trying to get out of it is really important, because that's how you actually add value. I'm never looking to go in and I think here's what I say. An average speaker goes in and is what I call a motivational speaker. People are motivated for an hour, and it's cool, it's great, cool, but there's no value out of it. A good or a great speaker is someone where I leave the room and that company yesterday will hopefully see value 3, 6, 12, 24 months down the road that they can tie back to my speech and say, their goal this year is to double their revenue. In 2 years from now, they say, wow, Aaron really helped us do that by implementing XYZ through his talk.
Ah, I love that you brought that to the table. How do you do that? Because I've seen two kinds of speakers. One, just kind of that motivational. Yeah, that felt really good. Couldn't tell you what I learned from it, but it just felt really good. That's, the motivational talk. And then there's others who like kind of pour the whole pot of pasta on your head. A lot of good stuff, but too much to really go and implement, go and make a transformation. How did you find the balance? And what is every time you step onto a new stage, are you looking for one change, 5 changes? What's your model, I guess? Mhm.
Yeah, look, I think it's really important for a speaker to go through what I call a needs assessment process. I strongly believe, and I'm very outspoken about this, some people might disagree with me, but I think hiring a speaker can be the best or worst investment your company makes. If you were hiring a speaker to come and just give you motivation and that's it, and they leave 60 minutes later and it was just motivation and you get nothing out of it, you're just lighting funny on fire. I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah.
When a speaker takes the time to go through that needs assessment process, have multiple calls, learn about your environment, your culture, your people, the challenges you're going through, the goals that you have, the same way that I did yesterday and learned that this company's trying to double their revenue. They're trying to get people to lead with confidence. They're trying to create more of a cohesive team. I can combine all that stuff, understand what's happening in the organization, and then essentially spit that out through my stories and through the lessons and connect things together. And I think when a speaker is willing to do that, not only is that a phenomenal investment for you, but everyone there is going to get so much more out of it.
So are you saying you do a little homework before you actually step on the stage?
Absolutely. It's going through that needs assessment process is really important to be able to tailor and understand what you're actually going to be doing.
Do you have a framework for your needs assessment process? What does that look like for you?
It's just a conversation or a series of conversations. I don't have a framework per se. Yes, I have different questions and things that I always ask, but it's going to be more of a back and forth casual conversation. It's always going to be recorded so I can go back and kind of watch and see the notes from it and all of that. But I really need to understand what's happening. And at the end of the day, the reason there's not necessarily a framework and it's more of a conversation, because I might go into it thinking one thing and come out of it through that conversation learning, well, this is actually what's happening in the company. These challenges they're actually going through. They actually have these goals. And unless you go into it with an open mind and have that conversation, it's harder to find those things.
Yeah, I love that you do that. So on the one side, there's always the challenges that the company went ahead and invested thousands of dollars, right, to have you come
Yeah.
and speak. So there's that. But what they're wanting is you to meet the needs of the people in the audience, because those are the ones who are going to meet their needs, right? So you almost have 2 sets of needs that you're serving at one time. So you took me through the process of how you kind of tap into what the company is looking for. How do you then get a feel or an idea of what the people sitting in the seats are going to need?
Well, it depends. I'd say, like, for example, that one yesterday and the one I had today, it was a conversation with a handful of people from the company, but it wasn't a conference of outside people. It was, it was everyone there is in the company. So they're all going through those same challenges. Yesterday, it was a smaller company, 100 people. And I had an understanding based on, I think I was meeting with like 5 or 6 people on these calls of what everyone's going through, people from different departments. And that's what allowed me to do that. Now, I have an event coming up that I have a needs assessment, I think in a couple of days, I think probably like Monday next week or Tuesday next week, for an event I have in like end of March. And that is a company that I've actually worked with them in the past internally, but now I'm working with them externally. And they're bringing me in for a conference with their customers. And so that's going to be a much different process. I already know about their company. I've already worked with them. I need to learn tell me about the customers, tell me about the clients, talk to me about the challenges they're going through, and really try and learn from that perspective and learn what has gone well in the past when you did this last year and the year before, what hasn't gone well, what's really resonating with these people, the types of people there, what are their backgrounds, what are the companies that they're coming from. I need to understand all of that because it's not just relating to your company now, it's relating to all these other people. And the other plus to that is because I'd be going to an event like that, I want to understand as much as possible and over prepare, because when that goes really well, there's a few hundred people in that room from other companies that maybe will bring me in to speak as well.
Yes, that is so true. Your next, done right, right? Your next best engagement is at your current one. So I love that. So speaking along those lines, do you ask for referrals? Do you do a post-event debrief to kind of continue to elevate your craft? Do you do anything post-event?
Yeah, absolutely. I always set up a post-event call to make sure that, just cross all the T's and dot all the I's. Sometimes that's getting the final part of the payment. Sometimes that's getting a testimonial. Sometimes it's getting referrals. That said, I'm very careful when I ask for those. Coming at it, in an event where it's an association, maybe I will ask for referrals. If I'm working with a large Fortune 500, I'm probably not going to ask for referrals. I'm going to start talking to them about, hey, we could do other workshops. We could talk to them about my consulting, talk to them about other things to work with them internally, because they'd probably prefer that over referring me outward. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't, but I get a really good sense of when and where to ask for those referrals or testimonials, or what version of them. And I think that's really important as well.
Okay, love it. Can we shift gears to revenue? One time, because you
Yeah.
mentioned that you do consulting and you do other things outside of speaking. Where in your business model, I guess percentage wise, how much of your business model and your revenue model is directly affected by getting onto stages and getting these speaking and training engagements?
I mean, most of it, I would say. Oftentimes I'll go in and speak, and then, either that leads to others, or, it's a one-off thing sometimes, or it leads to a workshop, or it leads to consulting. So most of my revenue starts with speaking or workshops with companies, and then can oftentimes lead to other things.
Very good. And have you found that the more your voice gets known, like the more you are referred and known for your keynotes or your talks, that your consulting revenue has risen kind of in step? Have you found that?
Absolutely. I also think that, look, at the end of the day, it's more about the value you provide. And and I think that, you could be the most well-known person in the world, but if you don't provide any value, then your fee can't reflect that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to make sure that the value you provide align with whatever you're consulting on or whatever you're speaking on when you're figuring out what to charge or what that revenue is.
Ooh, I love that. Value-based revenue. That's a good. Let's talk about that. So you were first just kind of invited to speak and share your story, and at some point you're like, this could actually, I'm enjoying this. This could be a career. What steps did you take from that place of realization to even know how to make a career out of it, how to start charging, how to create a speaker contract, all the different things that come with building a business out of speaking?
Yeah. I mean, I started 100% on my own, no bureaus, agents, anything. One of the biggest mistakes that speakers make is they think, I need a bureau, I need an agent. I'll tell all the speakers out there, I get less than 5% of speaking engagements a year from bureaus. I did about 90 last year. At least 85 were from me doing outreach or inbound to myself.
Love
I don't
it.
work with agents often. That doesn't mean I don't want to. Whenever an agent brings me something or bureau brings me something, I'm overly thankful. They love working with me, and I treat it as the cherry on top because I'm so grateful that they brought me something that my team and I didn't have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what's going to happen most of the time. Most of the time, you have to treat it as a business. And unfortunately, most speakers out there do not treat it as a business. They say they want a bureau or an agent, and then they don't go out and actually do the work. And so for me, it was understanding early on, okay, I need to do a bunch of free engagements, a bunch for $500, a bunch for $1,000, a bunch for $2,000, and start gradually raising that fee and finding ways to get out there. I mean, my team does everything from cold email at scale, LinkedIn outreach, SEO, ads, everything you can imagine to bring in speaking engagements. And by doing lots of things like that, it allows us to diversify where we get speaking engagements and contracts from.
So much wisdom right there. And we didn't pre-talk about this. So this is organic and natural. And I don't know if you were spying on me, probably not. Um, but that is, that I'm a speaker agent, but I did not like the model that's out there for just exactly that reason. I don't want to see Aaron sitting on the sideline, waiting and waiting, waiting for his scraps that he gets every now and then. I want your voice out there from backstory of my own. So I developed a pretty innovative agency that makes sure, number one, the speaker is in the driver's seat of their career, and it is a career. If you're gonna open any storefront, some basic things need to happen, right? You need to get the framework there. You need to get the team there. Like you treat it like a business. For some reason, a lot of speakers step in and just think it's just going to happen because they happen to be fabulous or they happen to have a strong story. But you had the wisdom somewhere pretty young where you figured out, no, I'm gonna make this a business. I'm gonna treat it like a business. You have a team. You are an in-demand speaker, yet you haven't let your foot off the gas. You still have that outward outreach going, or at least making sure that you're responding to people. You or your team is responding to people pretty quickly. Like you treat it like a business. And I love to hear speakers come on and say that, because that's what I preach every single day. And I think that there's this feeling like if I have a good story, if I'm good on stage, if I'm entertaining, then it's just going to happen. And I see a lot of really great voices kind of fizzle out because that's not the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm glad that you did that. So at what point did you say, I might need an assistant? I mean, I might need somebody to come alongside me in this journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a believer that in the beginning you need to do what works. And, I made my, first six figures in speaking from, doing everything, manually, from using Excel in a Google Sheet as my CRM. And then once you start making money, I started investing in tons of stuff. I mean, now it's, every time that I need assistance somewhere, I'm, down to hire, I'm down to invest in other tools. But I mean, I have a lot of software that my team and I use. I have, team all over the world, someone in the US here who does stuff. I have people in, India, I have people in the Philippines, people and someone in Pakistan doing different things all over within my business to help me succeed. I don't want to learn how to edit videos. I have no idea. I don't care. But, my guy in Pakistan's great at it. Awesome. He's going to deal with that for me.
Yeah, stay in
It's
your lane.
things like that.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Do you have anybody dialing and smiling? Is that something that you have other people do, or do you do that yourself?
I do not do that myself. I have someone who's cold calling. I also send out thousands of cold emails every day automatically that I don't touch, and we just deal with responses that I've built systems to do that. We do all LinkedIn outreach. We have tons of automated systems to do LinkedIn across different accounts, SEO, ads. So everything together adds up to getting responses.
Love it. And then what about organizations or networking? Are you part of NSA or any of the other kind of industry specific organizations that you have found that was helpful, at least if it was just in the beginning of your career?
I am not and have not now.
That's pretty amazing. I've seen both sides of I haven't seen any gray area that speakers either totally have not, because they're just, I don't know, don't like that thing, and others where they built their whole career on the backs of organizations. I didn't. I've kind of stepped into it after the fact because it's like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to, be part of NSA or whatever. But I myself was more like you, where I just got out there and did it. And then as I needed help, I brought the help on. As I needed business systems and software and, those kinds of back end support, I just did it. So love that this is a career that you get to build the castle you actually want to live in. You can design it in the way that you want to, but there are some basic principles. And if you treat it as a hobby, it's going to treat you as a hobby. If you treat it as a business, it's going to treat you as a business. So what do you feel like once you hit a certain threshold, it was less grind and more, filtering the engagements, deciding what was a good fit, what wasn't a good, where it seemed to finally get into flow? Are you there? I know, new level, new devil. Every time we grow and evolve, new challenges also evolve right along with us. So just kind of give us that journey.
I mean, yes and no. I'd say, look, do I get more inbound things now? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm also spending a lot more money and running a lot more things on SEO and ads now than I was 3 years ago. And so, of course, you're going to get more inbound when you put money and time into SEO and ads. At the same time, like we're still doing a lot of cold email, a lot of cold LinkedIn outreach, a lot of things like that to get opportunities. And I think, look, do I get more inbound? The short answer is yeah, sure, absolutely. But at the end of the day, I think it's also really important where I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, I think you're winning or you're losing, and there's zero in between. And at the end of the day, I think the problem that most speakers have is they are speakers. They treat it as they're like, I hate to say it, but most speakers are speakers. I'm an entrepreneur first and a speaker second. I'm involved in other businesses. I'm a partner in other things, and so I treat my speaking business as a business. And unfortunately, the speakers who are solely speakers, I think, end up being less successful. The speakers who are entrepreneurs and find a way to build a speaking business the right way, understand what a business is, and become successful because they treat it as a business.
Okay, you said some really powerful things there. Entrepreneur first, speaker second. I think that's very key if you are going to make this into a major part of your business model, or especially a major part of your revenue model. Love that you said that. Probably going to quote you if you don't mind, and
Yeah, feel
I'll
free.
I'll give you, of course, the credit. And then you're either winning or you're losing. There's nothing in between. I thought that was a really, really strong one as well. It is a number. You hear this, but it's a numbers game. And I love that you dropped kind of quickly, but it's key that you do not throw out maybe 10 feelers a month. You're in the thousands per month. It
I'll
is
probably have 4,000 cold emails go out today. Like
wowza.
it's a numbers game. I mean, yes, you can be, and that's, I hate to say it, but like that's why I'm going to win over so many other people and do. It's because I just the scalability. When you look at someone like, I don't know if you know kind of some of the famous entrepreneurs out there, but one person out there, his name's, Alex Hormozy. He talks a lot
Oh
about
yeah.
how, look, at the end of the day, if you just do more than other people, you're going to win. Like, I'm not physically sending thousands of cold emails every day, but I have systems built that do that for me. And because of that, I'm going to win a lot more opportunities than the person who sends 10.
There's so much value in that. We have part of our suite of services is called the gigs engine. And it really is that. It is an engine that cannot stop. If you go on vacation with your family, that engine still needs to be running in the background while you're speaking at a conference or on vacation, whatever it is. Because if it isn't, then 6 months from now or a year from now, your calendar is going to be empty. You're going to say, well, what happened? Right. And that's because you weren't taking that seriously. So tell me a little bit about the numbers. I do believe it's math, not magic. And what you put out is going to become what comes in. So let's say you sent 4,000. I know you do more than this, but let's just say you only sent 4,000 feelers in a month. Out of that, you get a certain amount of traction. When somebody looks interested or attraction kind of, there's a birth of attraction. What's the next step? Do you personally get on the phone with them, or does your assistant send the press kit? Like, what's the next step from there?
First things first is I will not in any situation quote a fee over email unless someone pushes me several times. I will not do it because at the end of the day, most speakers say my fee is $20,000. No, there are so many situations. I got a call literally yesterday where they want me to speak in 3 weeks from now. I happen to have the date open. I'm going to be flexible with their budget. Like there's so many situations. I do not give fees over email. That's the first thing.
Huge. That's a really great tip. Thank you for that for everyone.
Number two is like, I think it depends on the call. It depends on the time. I have a, salesperson. I also hop on calls myself. It depends on who the company's with. If I'm on a plane or not, it really does depend. Oftentimes we'll get on calls together, but then, maybe he'll be the one to follow up and call them, next week to see if they've made their decision or, things of that nature. So it definitely does depend, partly on who we're speaking with, partly on just if I'm available or not, but we both are, heavily involved.
So let's talk about the call. Is the call just saying how great Erin is, or is it you mostly asking questions to even see if you're a good fit or how you could serve them?
It's a combination. Yes, it's, you have to start a call introducing each other, telling them my story, but, I can tell someone my story in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
It's a quick intro. Then after that, it's, learning about their company. What are they looking to do? Sometimes I'll get on calls that are, we do cold outreach. Cold outreach is very different than inbound. Inbound, they come to you because they have an event, they're looking for that. When you do cold outreach, they might have an event that, they're interested in bringing you in. They also might just want to get on the call to learn more, and then you can convince them to bring you in and hire you. The amount of companies I've had just create companies or schools, it doesn't work with conferences and associations, but companies or schools get on the call with me, like what we're talking about, and just create an event out of thin air and pay me is astronomical. And that can happen all the time, if you show the value that you provide.
So you step into these calls, Aaron, I'm sure with a dollar amount of what you won't go beneath anyway, but you're gleaning information. Maybe they're going to put you in front of a ton of great people that you want to get in front of. So, and their budget is lower. You're weighing all that out. I love that you don't quote through email. I think that's very wise. Definitely something that we encourage. But once you get on the phone, how are you determining what that fee is going to be that you're going to quote them?
Yeah, I mean, the first things first is, let's just take the example of like a school. Even though, I mostly work with companies, I work with a lot of high schools, middle schools, colleges as well. Oftentimes I'm not going to just fly in for it, but if I'm, let's just say, in New York, maybe I'll work with two school. If I have an event on Wednesday, maybe I'll work for school on Tuesday, another one on Thursday at a lower budget because I'm in the area. It's a win-win for everyone. I get more money, they get me at a lower price point. I don't need to get another plane. Everyone wins in those situations. That's kind of the first thing. The second thing, once you're in this game long enough, you have a really good understanding of, based on where someone's at, who they are, their job title, their company, of what their fee or what their budget might be. You can get me on a call with someone, and I have most of the time a pretty good understanding before I quote, after talking to them for 10 minutes, where their budget probably is. And I kind of determine based on that sometimes. Sometimes I'll just ask them what their budget is and try and get that out of them as well. But every situation is different. I think it's really figuring that sales out. And that's why it's hard. Being sales for a speaker is challenging. It's not a traditional, this is a $5,000 offer, this is a $10,000 offer. There's lots of variables in place.
Plus, I'm sure you've got a kind of a ticker sheet in your own head. If I'm going to get on an airplane, I'm not going to do that for under, just
Yep.
not that you're communicating that fully upfront first.
Absolutely.
As you started getting braver with your fees, what was that deciding factor? Like, what did you have to realize about yourself that gave you the courage to ask for $10, $20, $30,000 for a talk?
I mean, can you produce the value that provides? I see way too many speakers who have spoken 5 times for $1,000 and like, all right, my fee's $10,000. No, it's not, because you're going to charge that. Let's just say you get it. You're going to deliver a $2,000 talk and you got paid $10,000. The meeting planner is going to be pissed. You're not going to get testimonial. It's not going to go well. It's not worth it. It's building it up gradually over time and having the confidence in what you're charging and making sure that the value you provide can match that. And I'll give you an example. I have a mentor of mine, very successful entrepreneur, runs 9-figure businesses, does speaking engagements. His speaking fee is $100,000. Doesn't mean he always gets it, but his speaking fee is $100,000. He can show, for example, if he goes to a nonprofit, hey, last year you raised $2 million. Let me show you how I did, help this other nonprofit raise $4 million through me speaking. Don't you think that extra $2 million is worth you paying me $100,000? Okay, he can prove it. It's worth him going in and then paying him.
So you're kind of collecting those case studies along the way too, because I think
building those testimonials, building those case studies, and learning what you're doing. And not every situation is like that. That's an extreme of like, he knows the numbers in that situation. But, for example, the sales kickoff I did yesterday, I'm going to stay in touch with them and I'm going to figure out how my speech impacted them over the next 6-12 months so I can have data behind that and go to other companies and say, for this company's sales kickoff, I was able to help them double their revenue by doing X, Y, Z. Wouldn't that be awesome to do the same for you?
Oh, I love that. So how do you just check in with your contact there? Hey, how are things looking?
Yeah. And really understanding how that impact has affected them. what their team behavior is like, how they're communicating better, really taking the key takeaways that we crafted and figuring out where they stand, 6 months from now and 12 months from now. Obviously, I'm hoping that they bring me in again, but I also want to learn and understand where they're at.
Yeah. So much goodness here. Okay, so I know by this time in the show, there's a good number of the Speak Packed audience is going to want to know, how do I follow Aaron? How do I connect with him? We also have producers that watch this show. You may have some out there who want to bring you in to speak. So where are some of the best places to reach out to you?
Yeah, my website's aarongolub.com. My email is aaron@aarongolub.com. Super simple, but also on social media, or LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, any of that stuff. But easiest way is just my website, filling out that form, or aaron@aarongolub.com.
Okay, perfect. And we will put that in the show notes, but if you happen to be just listening to the podcast, it's Aaron, Aaron, Aaron Golub, Golub, 1L, 1B. Aaron Golub, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the signature question, Aaron, if you were to give maybe an emerging speaker, they've been out there, they've been speaking, but really want to kick their speaking into career status where they can really rely on it for their revenue and or at least a big part of a driver of a business that they're running. What is one tactical thing that they could do that can help kick them into that next year and that next level of their career?
Yeah. Let me give you a shorter and a longer answer. The first part is, if you're not doing outreach, start doing LinkedIn outreach. It's easy, it's simple, it's cheap. You can start it right here, right now, and just go doing outreach on LinkedIn. The longer answer is, if you're successful and you're making money, start investing that money into things like SEO, things like cold email. Yes, cold email is very complex. If you want to do it right, and the way that I do it, it's time, it's money. Most people send emails and they land in spam. And learning how to do that's important. If you want to do SEO and do it right, SEO is going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of time, but you'll see those results in 6 to 12 months. And so if you have the capacity or the team to do those other things, start doing them. But if you don't, it's free to go on LinkedIn and start doing outreach. There's no reason you shouldn't be maxing out your connection requests every single week.
So step us through reaching out in LinkedIn. How do you identify who you even want to reach out to? And what's your process there?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your industry and your target market. Sometimes it's meeting planners or conference planners or executive directors of associations. For companies, oftentimes for me, it's head of human resources or chief people officer, chief diversity officer, or something like that. I'm very direct. I'm not someone who's going to beat around the bush. To be honest with you, I hate to say it, but I'm not going to get to know you in the messages. That's not who I am. I'm going to be very direct. This is who I am. This is what I do. Do you want to chat? Yes or no? Let's not waste each other's time. I'm not going to say let's not waste each other's time, but I'm not this, saw this on your profile, let me on. No, I'm just going to get to the point, and either it resonates or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, we're not a good fit to work together. That's totally fine. But I'm very direct. Other people aren't as direct, and that's totally fine. But I know myself, and I don't want to have a 30-message conversation with someone to get on a call.
Very cool. Okay. So just basically getting out there, getting your name out there, showing that you're available. That's
absolutely.
Yep. All right, Aaron, any last thoughts for speakers who are emerging?
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, becoming a successful speaker is probably one of the hardest businesses you can get into. It just is. The sales process is long. The sales process is annoying. It is what it is. There's so many uncontrollables. And that doesn't mean that you can't do it. You can, but it's going to take time. And if you're in your first year, your second year, your third year, and you're not seeing the results you want, just take a deep breath and understand that it can come, but it's going to take time. It just does. And it will come after a certain amount of time. But speaking engagements, the sales cycle is longer than something that you can get on the phone with someone and just close that deal within 24 hours.
I would like to dive into that just as a closing thing in just a moment. But first, what makes it worth it? What part of your speaker life has made all that early grind and that continual effort that you put out every single day to make this life worth it for you?
I think just the impact that you make on other people through, events at companies, at conferences. The event I was at yesterday, I got, a standing ovation, and so many people coming up to me after talking to me about, how it helped them, how it impacted them. Someone talked to me about how he's had, a sales drought, and talked to me about, how it's been really hard and how, he's kind of thinking of new ways after the speech and things of that nature. And so I think that's really impactful and helpful.
Okay, great. Yes. So singing the same song. We'll close with this because I think it's so important, and it is something that it takes speakers off guard. And I think a lot of otherwise very impactful voices fizzle out too soon because they just think, I've got a strong message. I'm willing to put in the work. If I have the message and I do the work for 3 months, it's all going to happen. And when it doesn't, they're disheartened and they think that, no, either they're just not cut out for it. But if you're in it for the long run, I think it took Tony Robbins 12 years, right? I don't think it needs to take that long, but that's 12 years of very, very hard work in his day. If you're in it knowing this is going to be work and I might not see the fruits in the first year, maybe not even the second year, what would you say to a speaker about that stick-to-itiveness? What do they need to know going in that they're not going to give up too soon?
Either have a job or run another business, because you're not going to make a ton of money the first couple of years, and that's fine. My first couple of years out of college, I worked at a financial firm and was doing this, and then eventually built it up, and I left that job. But there's no shame in having a 9-to-5 or running another business that you can make money sooner while you build this up, because speaking is a business where you're not going to make money over the next 3 or 6 months. If you're starting out, you're just not. So doing something else on top of it, there's no reason that you can't do that. And if you're struggling to make money right now as a speaker, you absolutely should do that to go coincide with it.
Yeah, I love what you said. And the beautiful thing about speaking, if it's aligned right, it can actually help build your other business, right? Or your other, maybe you're working for a company. You can get them to sponsor you. To speak. Sponsored speaking is actually a really big thing in itself if you do want to try to start making money earlier. But I love your heart. I love the message that you're getting out there, and your wisdom is spot on.
You.
Thank you for bringing it to Speak Pact.
Of course.
All right. So everybody who is listening, I know you got value out of hearing Aaron. It's AARONGOLUB, Aaron Golub. Look him up, connect, and he and I together gave you our wisdom and our gift. And we ask, if you want to give a gift in exchange, go ahead and post this forward. There's somebody else out there whose voice needs to be heard. And maybe this is the exact show they need to hear to get that done. For now, thanks for being with us. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Pact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the Speak Pact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply hashtag SpeakPact.